Your favorite NFL team out of the playoffs? The Saturday night game looks like a dud? No problem. Sportswire Radio has you covered because I'm excited about this one here because we're about to have a doubleheader of wrestling championship entertainment coverage, and there is a lot of news and developments here in WCE Plus with our guest here tonight on Sportswire Radio. Haven't had him on in a while, and he's bringing back a championship and, in a way, a company that he certainly had quite a history with and much, much more. So let's get right to it. So wait for it. Further ado here on the Sports Report. Number one global sports show. Wrestling star they call the resident rock star. The Wrestling Championship Entertainment award winner for Best Mic on the Year. His name is the resident rock star, Shawn Jovi. We are living on a prayer with you, my friend, because we have you here to kick off 2023. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Tom. You know, that intro never gets old. I'm finally starting to not laugh when it happens. I'm finally starting to show no emotion for it, but
well, I appreciate
it's so good. It's so good.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, certainly that's something that I get. In fact, I had one wrestler that came on not too long ago, and he was making a joke on some of the things that he had dreaded. And I said, well, maybe coming on Sportswire. And he said, no. He said, I actually like the introduction. So I'm like, all right, well, we've accomplished something. But my friend, very, very good to be with you here. We have a lot to talk about here tonight. And I want to kick off here with the news that has been heard around the world here when it comes to Wrestling Championship Entertainment, because an old foe, an old friend, and a familiar championship in a company that you held court for a very, very long time looks like it's returning, and that is Rona's Championship Wrestling and the resident rock star Shawn Jovi. For those that are listening here and watching on Sportswire Radio, talk about it.
So, RCW, Rona's Championship Wrestling, was a backyard federation I came up with when I was a teenager. And we wrestled on a trampoline, you know, fun, kicks and giggles. But that went down, and I think that went under in about 2010, 2011. The belt was used on and off for other things in between, but I decided when WC first started to bring the RCW title into it as a temporary title to use before we got our own. And that was in our first year. And after Fight or Fright, not last year, but the year before, we decided to retire it when I reobtained it off of Craven Rage. But, new year, new things, right? So, I miss the RCW title, and I miss what it stood for. The fun, the entertainment, everything about it. And I never got to hold like an actual like physical title. Oops, this is upside down. Like an actual like title with the RCW logo on it. So I went and upgraded it, and I am going to be using it for exclusive matches through WCE on my vlog on YouTube. So that's where those matches will air. They will also appear alongside the show, but the match for the RCW title every show will be airing first. It'll air before the whole show is released on my channel exclusively.
And of course, and we certainly look forward to that. And of course, everybody can follow the resident rock star, Shawn Jovi, on YouTube and Facebook. And on YouTube, Jovi's vlog has 517 subscribers. So a lot of people are going to definitely be checking this out. And I got to think that going into the season, the resident rock star, this is going to give you a lot of motivation here. Because now that you've got the title back, this is the company that was your baby for all those years. So I've got to think here that this is going to give you a lot of motivation already going into a big season ahead here in WCE.
Oh, yeah. And with the way the season tragically ended for me last year with the whole COVID bug and me losing my interstate championship shot because of it, it's kind of nice to enter the new year with a new, refreshing outlook and take on the whole thing. And this RCW championship is the first way to start.
No question about that here. And let me get to some comments. Adonis Felio is in the house. He says, "Evening, Tom," and good evening to you as well. And the resident rock star Shawn Jovi. For those that may be listening and watching this on Sportswire Radio, I was also curious, and talk about the history of the company, some big moments, because I know there was a big history here that goes back a long time. Because you started the company back in 2007, and I know last year was the 15-year anniversary. But talk about some of the big moments in the company's history.
Right. There was quite a few. We started with a roster of 5 guys, including myself, in 2007. We were all pretty much juniors, freshmen, whatever, in high school. Just wanted to do some for kicks and giggles. 2 of which are actually affiliated with WC, other than myself, Darkfire and Belial. Those were 2 of my guys who helped start the whole thing. And some other highlights we've had some good ones. We've wrestled on trampoline. We've wrestled on a base, which is like mattresses and whatnot. But and we also had ourselves a super show right before the group folded. That consisted of some people from Indiana I knew. They came up and we had a big show. It was pretty fun. Some of the other matches, we don't have like anything crazy, super crazy, famous match wise. It was more of a childhood idea,
Okay, makes sense.
Most of my memorable matches kind of expanded outside of RCW. I had some great rivalries in RCW. Don't get me wrong, with Darkfire, with Rex Renegade, people like that. But I feel like once that group folded and I branched out is when more of the bigger matches happened.
Certainly, that makes sense. And let me get to a few more comments from Adonis Felio. He also says, "Good evening to you, resident rock star. Wants to wish everyone a happy new year and a happy Jovi year, WCE style." And, you brought up Indiana for a second. There's a couple of questions I have. Let me go to Indiana first, because I find that fascinating in itself, that you wrestled in a state like that. And I think I might have asked you this in the past, but since obviously we're going back down memory lane here once again with the news, once again here with RCW returning here to WCE, and it'll be an opener almost for all WCE shows, which I believe are going to start sometime in April. Obviously, let's keep our fingers crossed the weather holds up, but that's the tentative plan, so we're not that far away. But what was that like? Traveling from Wisconsin to Indiana and wrestling in those places. Talk to me about how that all kind of unfolded.
It was wild. So the group I went to in Indiana Championship Wrestling, was around for longer than what RCW was. They started quite a few years before me, but they also wrestled on a trampoline. And then they went to the base, and then they went to the ring and all that good stuff. And I can't remember how I discovered them, but I was scrolling through YouTube and found these guys, and I was just super inspired by what they did and how much quality they put into the work for what little they had to work with. And I thought, and they really expanded and went out. They were actually an indie promotion for a little bit until some things happened a couple of years ago. But as far as traveling goes, that was pretty wild, considering I do not have a driver's license.
That makes 2 of us.
Yeah. So I had to take a Greyhound from the Green Bay Metro Station down to Chicago, down to Indianapolis, and get picked up from there to go to the shows. It was a lot of coordinating and a lot of traveling, but just to be able to meet the guys and be able to work with them over the years, it was a great time. It was worth every penny I spent to go there. Every memory I've had, it was all worth it.
100%. How do you think that maybe helped you, not just in your wrestling career, but maybe, I guess, in your overall life? Because again, you don't have a driver's license. You're going down there. It's obviously a travel in itself. especially to get around because in New York, I mean, we can certainly find ways to get around easily without mass transit, but it's certainly different in places in the Midwest, especially
Oh yeah.
Wisconsin. So, I mean, so what did you learn from that experience? Let's say from the wrestling end of it, but also maybe outside in your day and day life.
Um, well, it's nice to travel. Every place you go in the world is different, and that's what I kind of like. Indiana was a change of scenery. There's not much there. I'm gonna be honest.
Sure.
There's no corn mazes for you to enjoy and see.
I did enjoy that.
Uh,
I did enjoy that.
yeah. But it's weird, like just finding these guys on YouTube and just going out to visit them. I made it a tradition for a few years just to try and pop in for a show or two every so often. And then in 2017, they got a ring and everything, and I just started going there again. And I met a lot of great friends along the way, made a lot of memories. Uh, it's it was a really fun 2010s era with those guys, and with the guys in Chicago I knew too. Like I've been a lot of places.
Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, you think about it in those kind of moments, whether you're in, let's say, just into college or going, senior years in high school. And those are kind of the moments you kind of hold and cherish because obviously we're all at a different time and every stage is different. But when you kind of go outside from that, you kind of have to adjust differently. And then you've brought up the trampoline. And I was kind of curious about that for those that are listening and watching. I mean, what was that like in maybe kind of wrestling and being able to kind of keep up on a trampoline wrestling outside? I mean, I'm kind of curious on how that
Uh,
maybe helped you.
Honestly, I don't even know how I pulled it off.
I was
It's
going to
fun.
ask. I'm like, how did you pull that off?
I mean, we were younger, so it's a little bit more fun. But honestly, the weirdest part about the trampoline, obviously, besides the fact you're bouncing, which makes everything awkward and unrealistic in a wrestling world. That's why I was like, it's more of a play around thing than an actual like headlock and everything. But what was I gonna say? It was the trampoline is not easy. I do not recommend people wrestling on a trampoline. I'm just gonna be straight up honest.
Well, I
There's
would
way better
imagine
ways.
so.
I
Yeah.
would rather have you wrestle on a mattress where you're not gonna break someone's neck by trying to German them on a
Well,
surface where it's bouncy and could easily break a neck or something like that.
I would have to imagine though that it maybe taught you a bit, maybe in a way, what not to do in the ring. I mean, obviously doing
Oh,
something where you have to really, I mean, really, really be cautious. I mean, it's one thing, right, to wrestle when you're actually inside a ring, and it's
right.
another to be able to wrestle in something like a trampoline. I mean, I just have to imagine you learn so much because everything literally is like at the snap of a finger.
Oh yeah, it was wild, and we even wrestled on the ground a few times. Like anything like involving like weapons or whatever, we always did ground matches because we tried setting up a chair in the ring once, and it went through right through the poked a hole in the trampoline.
Oof,
So
oof.
I was like, well, I can't use weapons in the ring anymore. It's gonna break the canvas. We cannot use this.
Well, that's a good idea, and I want to give a shout out to somebody that has a comment about you, the resident rock star Shawn Jovi, and he's got a comment about that championship that you have on your shoulder, and his name is, of course, Craven Rage. You might have heard of him. Of course, you and him have had quite a number of wars over the past year or so in WCE. Of course, he is our undisputed Universal Grand Slam Wisconsinite champion. And he says, "Evening, Mr. Tom Brice, and evening, Mr. Shawn Jovi. That RCW title looks great, and I'm looking forward to seeing that title coming into a new era of wrestling championship entertainment. I am definitely interested in having it around my waist, which I am looking forward to having you fall to me again. Boy, is it me, the resident rock star Shawn Jovi, but have shots already been fired in WCE when it comes to this RCW title that you have on your shoulder right now?"
Well, I mean, I lost my shot at Craven's title, so Craven, you worry about your title. I'll worry about mine. That's all I gotta say. And when the time comes, I'll beat you again.
But
Hopefully. this time.
But
He is undefeated last year. I'll give him all the credit in the world for that.
well, yes, and that's my point. He's now basically declaring that he wants that championship. I mean, does that
Oh,
mean is there a number one contender? I mean, what's the plans? I mean, everyone's listen, we have more comments about the championship, by the way. So I mean, I'm assuming that you're going to have to figure out who's in line to take this championship away from you, and you're going to fight like hell, I know, to keep it.
yep. It's my baby, and honestly, my plan for the first show is open challenge. Whoever is there and wants their shot, come and get it.
Wait. Do you want to repeat that again for those that are listening and watching here on Sportswire Radio, the resident rock star, Shawn Jovi?
Sure, absolutely. My first match for the RCW Championship in April, or whenever we start up, depending on weather and all that, I plan on making it an open challenge to anyone in the back. It can be WCE, it can be someone from somewhere else. I don't really care. I just want to defend this and add prestige to it. So if anyone wants to step up and face the resident rock star, you have an opportunity in April.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I interpreted this as anybody out there in the wrestling world. That could be free agents galore. I mean, who knows what happens with CM Punk at AEW? Maybe he says, you know what, AEW, Tony Khan, let me out of my contract. I want to square off with Shawn Jovi for the RCW title. I mean, listen, Mandy Rose, her 30 days is up. I mean, maybe she even wants to come in to WC and get the RCW title. I mean, there is a who's who of people in the wrestling world that very well could be saying, you know what? I want that championship. That's the premier championship in all of wrestling. We have people with the likes of C2K, who's always with us every week on Sportswire Radio, talking about the legend of C2K. We had John The Rock Jackson, 18-time world champion from RWF. Maybe he wants a crack at the championship. I mean, listen, who knows? If WWE gets bought by the Saudis, maybe Sami Zayn's a free agent. Instead of worrying about if he's an oos, he could be worrying about if he's carrying the RCW championship. I mean, there is a who's who of people here on Sportswire Radio that we know of could very well want this championship. And let's get to some comments here. Adonis Felios has said, let me be the first to say, I accept. I mean, the resident rock star, I mean, are you accepting Adonis Felio being, let's say, the first to declare his shot at the RCW championship?
I mean, like I said, it's first one through the curtain on the day of the show. So, I mean, you can accept all you want. Anyone can accept. It's just a matter, are they going to be there when the time comes?
So that even means, that even means, ladies and gentlemen, even some of those big names, those heavy hitters that we mentioned, if they don't get through that curtain first, they ain't getting a shot at the title. They're right in the back of the line. They got to go figure out what their plans are next. They're going to have to go from wherever they came from here. I mean, this is a huge, huge development. And I want everybody, first of all, to follow RCW. RC Rules. That is RC Rules. That is RCW, Rona's Championship Wrestling. Please follow Rona's Championship Wrestling for all the great things that the company does here. Certainly, we want to make sure that we support those here on Sportswire Radio that support us. We also want everybody to follow Wrestling Championship Entertainment. You can do that here on WCE Heat, WCEHeat.com, YouTube, WCE Heat, which is the link, the ad handles where you can find all things related here to WCE coverage, and we will have coverage throughout the months here on Sportswire Radio leading up here to the season. Also have here this individual who I think we all know of, and he says here, nice championship. And Craven Rage, by the way, gives you an LOL. I mean, any thoughts on Craven Rage's LOL before I get to the next comment?
I've never really seen Craven laugh out loud, so I call shenanigans.
All right. Well, I mean, I tell you what. I mean, looking at the picture of that championship on the Facebook page, again, RCW Rules on Facebook and YouTube. You can find out more on the history of Rona's Championship Wrestling. I would say stay tuned. And also want to give a shout out to one of our recent guests here on Sportswire Radio. That is Prince Charles. And he says, good evening. The Prince is in the house. And I mean, maybe he's declaring that he wants in on this open challenge for the RCW championship. I don't know. I mean, everybody's, I'm sure, going to have something to say about it. I am sure the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, who's in the back waiting to come on later on here on Sportswire Radio, he's going to have something to say about it. And I think everybody here is fired up about the news here regarding it. And I also wanted to bring up here, before we get into some more stuff related to Wrestling Championship Entertainment, obviously, you were also named Best on the Mic this year. But we have some new music. I saw we have a brand new entrance theme, and talk about that for those that are listening here on Sportswire Radio, and what kind of led you to the new entrance music.
Right. So, oh man, it's kind of a long story, but my new theme right now is by Steel Panther, and it's a cover of Backstreet Boys. I Want It That Way. I know it sounds hilarious on paper. It sounds absolutely terrible, but let me enlighten the fans. So, as a resident rock star, even with the last name Jovi, people are like, "Oh, like Bon Jovi." I mean, like, of course, but there's more to Shawn Jovi than just being a Bon Jovi off Wish. There's more
Well,
to it. That's where the resident rock star comes into play. And I wanted something that gave myself a unique look to break away from the Jovi aspect that I have been carrying myself with for quite some time. And one great thing about professional wrestling and one great thing about professional wrestlers are those who can rebuild themselves and reinvent themselves. I've always been a fond believer in that. Chris Jericho is one of my idols for that reason alone. So that's kind of where the inspiration. I want it to be a new year, a new Shawn Jovi, a new season with chances. And hey, I got my logo on the back of my jacket now. I don't know if y'all can see it,
I see a little
but
bit. Unfortunately, you're a little cloudy tonight, but we saw
uh,
some of it. Yeah, unfortunately,
yeah, it's hard. It's hard to do, but it's a nice logo. It's the same logo I had before, just black and pink and white. It's a new color scheme to kind of electrify and get people amped for a new Shawn Jovi.
Well, listen, I mean, you did bring up Chris Jericho, and certainly he's always been able to rejuvenate himself. And listen, John Bon Jovi himself, I mean, Bon Jovi was able to survive all the trends and have #1 records and still be as massive as he was in the 80s. I mean, you think about his career for a second before we go back into wrestling. I think about Keep the Faith, These Days, Crush,
Yeah,
Bounce, The Lost Highway. I mean, Have a Nice Day. I mean, listen,
it goes on forever.
I mean, he was really, again, he's really the only artist from that kind of how can I put it, kind of that hair metal, whatever you want to call it, hard rock era of the 80s that was able to still stay as relevant as he is almost up until today. So, I mean, that's certainly a great segue. And Steel Panther, a little bonus, I actually just realized this, and when we were kind of talking, that the actual singer of a Steel Panther actually used to be in a Van Halen tribute band called the Atomic Punk. So for whatever reason, I was kind of thinking there had to be some tie into some band here. Maybe Shawn Jovi is going off and branching out a little bit, and that could certainly see why. But I do have some comments, so let me get to the comments. People don't want to hear me talk about Bon Jovi's discography and where the Steel Panther band comes from. Nicholas Crenson has already put the clock emoji, so you know that Nicholas Crenson has a lot to say. We'll get to him though, but the resident rock star is up first. Craven Rage says, Shawn Jovi, if you do step into my yard, spoiler alert, you know if you face me, you know you're facing the beast, the goat, and you will fall to me. And you know what happened last time. I took that title before. I can definitely do it again. You want to respond to that?
Yeah, why not? I mean, Craven, that's a nice spoiler. You are what 3-1 on me, but remember, your only loss in WC and in wrestling in general is to me. I'm going to have that cloud over your head until you lose that championship.
Mm.
And even though I can't technically challenge for it because I lost at Three Doors Down, doesn't mean somebody out there is going to get it. And when you're dethroned, hey, if I'm still champ at the time, maybe we can do it again. But make sure you know that this time it's going to be different. We can have any match you want, but I'm going to come out on top this time. Because, like I said, it's a new year, a new Shawn Jovi, and it's going to be a rocking year, and I promise that.
Well, I think it's going to be maybe just as, or if not more rocking than what you used to see rocking with Dick Clark New Year's Eve, because I got a feeling that the resident rock star, Shawn Jovi, is going into 2023 with a big, big bang. Let me get to some more comments here because I've got a bunch of them. Because I think people right now are looking at the Chargers and Jaguars games, and basically the game is over, and they're coming here to Sportswire because the game, spoiler alert, is a blowout right now. So that's good for us here because that means more people are
Wait.
tuned
Who's
in.
losing? Who's
Jacksonville
losing?
is Jacksonville.
Ah,
It's
man, my
20.
dream of the Khans getting a WWE title was ruined.
No, well, yeah, it's definitely ruined, and I'm sure that they're going to have plenty of people probably leave that building here soon because it looks like it's going to get
Yeah.
very ugly, if not
Hope
already.
they tune in.
But we have a comment here from John Dietrich here. I haven't seen John here before. When's Jovi going to stop listening to soft ass music and start listening to the heavy stuff? I mean, is that a
Uh,
shot at you?
uh, well, first off, he's my boss at the
Oh,
job.
okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
So that's actually hilarious. He is he's not a Bon Jovi fan, but it's always funny we talk about it at work. He says if he ever became president, he would ban Bon Jovi. I'm like, well, you can ban Bon Jovi, but you can't ban my gimmick.
But why would he want to ban Bon Jovi for? Because even if you're not a Bon
No.
Jovi fan, you got to respect their longevity. I mean, you
Oh
think
yeah,
about. I
oh
mean,
yeah, absolutely.
again,
Everyone's
looking
got
at,
their
at the
issue.
looking at their career, I mean, again, not to go on a soapbox rant here, but I mean, you think about their albums: "Slippery When Wet," "New Jersey," "Keep the Faith,"
Mhm.
"These Days," "Crush," "Bounce," "The Lost Highway." I mean, he's got
They
a
go on
resume.
forever.
It goes on forever,
Yeah.
and there's really very few bands that could say that. I mean, so I guess
Oh
that's
yeah.
his.
He's got a Hall of Fame career, that's for sure.
Oh, and
He's
he
the
was able
reason the
to
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
and he was able to adapt. I mean, he went from being an opening act for Judas Priest and the Scorpions to going into country. So I mean, good for him. But I'll move on. Adonis says, "Move over, Seth freaking Rollins." And Nicholas Crenson, the new Messiah, he has a comment directed at you because he says, "No, that clock is for Jovi. Everything is a matter of time." What do you interpret that comment from the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, who's going to be on here in a little while?
Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but this upcoming weekend, Jovi's vlog, I actually had a little confrontation with Crenson for the first time in the off season on camera.
Ooh,
So,
ooh.
yep. So I will say to tune in this week. I think I'll have it up on Monday or Tuesday and see what his intentions are. I kind of got an idea what they are, but hey, same offer. There's an open challenge coming up. Crenson, if you want to stop my clock, now's your time.
Now, should I ask Mr. Crenson about this when he comes on in a little while on Sportswire Radio? Should I ask him this, or should I wait till the vlog comes out?
You can do either. I don't care.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough. I
You're the
mean,
host,
certainly.
man. You're the
Well,
host.
I mean, actually, I do have a question here before I get to Nicholas Crenson again about vlogs, because I'm pretty sure I saw this on the one of the more recent vlogs out there where it kind of showed, I believe it was James Marshall's house moving away from Medford, Wisconsin. And
Yep.
I believe Mr. Crenson was outside smoking a cigarette with shorts. And I had brought this up on Sportswire Radio a few days ago, and I figured you might know something about this. Was that Mr. Crenson in the vlog, actually in this kind of in the cold weather snow flurries, helping out there with shorts and a sweater, smoking a cigarette, or was that somebody else? I'm just
I must
curious
have.
now.
No, Crenson wasn't able to help us move James's stuff that day. I'm not
So
sure
in
who you're.
well, it was somebody in the video. It almost looked like Crenson. He had glasses, a sweater.
Oh, that was Darkfire probably.
All
You
right.
got
Well,
glasses recently.
okay.
Otherwise, if you're thinking of Crenson, we did do a highlight package in that vlog, so
Yes,
that
I
might
did
have
see
been
that.
there.
All right, and I have a comment here, I guess, from an upcoming guest, and I usually don't put these type of comments in here before I get to Nicholas Crenson. Adam Morgan, who we're going to be speaking with very soon on Sportswire Radio, says, "I want to see you defend the belt in a bra and panties match." I think he's being
I don't want.
facetious there. Yeah,
I mean, if he loves the big, sexy, big guy, I mean, I guess I don't blame you, but that kind of would set the business back quite a few years if we went back to Braun
yeah.
Panties.
I had a comment from somebody that's one of our listeners who actually liked our video at the beginning, Anthony Finkel, and he was going on about the WWE, and he was saying Vince has got to bring back the bra and panties, and I'm like, bro, that's never coming back. They're a corporate company, and WCE is family friendly to an extent as well, and I unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you see things, don't see that those things are coming back here. Nicholas Crenson also wants to say, yeah, it was a clip of us getting in the ring. Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that confirmation. He also says fighting words, Adonis Felios. He felt that was from Nicholas Crenson. And Nicholas Crenson wants to remind me Green Day is one band that has longevity. Yes, I would agree with you that Green Day has
Yes,
longevity, but
absolutely.
Bon Jovi's got a little bit more longevity because they started out in the early 1980s. And in fact, I actually know this, and you'll appreciate this because you're a Bon Jovi fan. He got his start, John Bon Jovi, because I believe his brother was Tony Bon Jovi, and he was a big record producer, and he used to hang out. There was a record place. It was in the city. I don't know if it might have been the record plant, and he actually used to kind of sweep and clean up afterwards overnight, and he started recording music, and that's kind of how he got the idea of starting a band, which led to Bon Jovi. This had to have been in the maybe early 80s, like 82, 83. So,
Yeah, they took off really fast, if I remember
yep,
hearing right.
yep. And
They
that's
like
how they,
really took off.
yep. Yep. Mercury Records and all that stuff in there. I mean, there's a number of bands that we could go into when it comes to longevity, but we are here on Sportswire Radio because we are not talking about music. We are talking about WCE, but also the news here about Rona's Championship Wrestling is getting ready to resume, and that championship belt that the resident rock star Shawn Jovi has on his shoulders, it is coming back. It is going to be an action-packed year from our friends over at WCE. For more information on Rona's Championship Wrestling, you can go to RCW Rules, and my name is the Reverend Tom Brice. And if you are on Sportswire Radio right now, you can follow us anytime on Sportswire Radio at Facebook, Sportswire Radio, YouTube at Sportswire Radio, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player. And I say about 25 minutes or so to a half an hour, we will have on the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, who will have a lot to say about this, plus much, much more. So we will have more very soon with him, but let's get to some more comments. John Dietrich says, I think he meant to say Green Day hasn't been good since Dookie, which was like what, their second album, I think. Was that the second album, if I'm not mistaken? And he says, Green Day, I'll have another beer. We know this individual. He says, hi, everyone. So want to give him a big shout out. Anything you might want to say about this individual? I know he's big in kind of our history here in what led to WC. Anything you might want to say about this fellow?
Yeah, I don't know him well. I know he is a big piece of Wisconsin wrestling history when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to wrestling in the yard. But I think I wrestled him in 2010. Actually, it was for an indoor show called for UWA. It was in Spencer, Wisconsin. It was like one of those blink and you miss it towns,
Hmm.
and he seemed like a pretty good guy. I would love to meet him again, honestly.
Hmm.
I know he's retired; he doesn't wrestle anymore, but I would love to shake his hand and meet him again. He
Now
seems like a good guy then, good guy now.
let me ask you a question on this individual, if you don't mind me asking this. And I don't know who's listening when it comes to the powers that be at Wrestling Championship Entertainment. Now, I get from the in ring side that this individual might be retired, but could this be somebody that maybe, I don't know, could maybe be involved in the company in some ways, maybe to help out some of the newer talent, or just be somebody that could, people can pick the brain off, because this guy's got a resume that's as good as anybody's. And I think Wisconsin, not only wrestling history but backyard wrestling history as well. Is that something that is a fair question to ask?
I mean, yeah, I would be all for him being have a role in WC in some way. I've heard a lot of great things about him. I've heard so many great stories. So I would love to have a veteran of his stature, whatever you want to call it. I would love to have him on board. I would love. I believe very heavily in WC and our cause to reignite wrestling in Wisconsin in the back, through the backyard, through the underground means. And I think he would be a great piece to that puzzle of making it come all together.
I would even go further in saying that Wrestling Championship Entertainment is reigniting backyard wrestling everywhere because
Oh
we
yeah,
bring you guys up all the time from different places, whether it's places like in Rochester that does backyard wrestling. We're going to have on a wrestler coming up, Stefan Havoc. And Stefan Havoc is a legendary wrestler out of Saratoga here in upstate. We're going to have on another wrestler coming up in another state and the week afterwards. And you guys come up all the time because there are videos out there which you can find on the Wrestling Championship Entertainment YouTube page that has 800, 900, 1,000, 3,000, 4,000 plus views. So what it says is that Wrestling Championship Entertainment is not just about reigniting the Wisconsin backyard wrestling scene. It's really everywhere because you guys get brought up all the time in all my segments because, as you know, I speak with people all over the world who are
that's true.
professional wrestlers, backyard wrestlers, and we're always talking about Wrestling Championship Entertainment. So you guys have kind of set the standard here, and that leads me into Wrestling Championship Entertainment and talk about what it meant to you on being named, which is no surprise to most of us here because we've had you on 3 or 4 different times, and being the
Right.
person that was best mic for this year. I mean, talk about what that meant to you to be the best on the mic in WCE in 2022.
As far as being best on the mic goes, I appreciate everyone who voted and picked me for it. Honestly, I didn't think I'd be in any of the awards this year, but I wound up with an award, so I can't say I'm not happy. I'm very satisfied and proud. But um, I think the vlogs and telling my story through the vlogs is what gets people hooked and want to listen to what I have to say. I don't know if that's true per se, but I feel like the story I tell it kind of lures people in and lets them understand and relate. And that's what I want to do is I want people to relate, whether they're backyard wrestlers, any person on earth. I just want to have a good time in life. I want people to enjoy the ride with me, whether it's watching me on YouTube or being there alongside.
Well, I think that's a really noble thing to say because if you think about everything going on in the world, I mean, that's certainly something that we could use much more of, and that's why I think it was well deserved. And certainly, I still say no surprise that you had wound up winning the award. And then, I mean, obviously, we spoke a lot about RCW, but now Wrestling Championship Entertainment. We even spoke about the fact that we've had a number of different announcements. We've seen all this stuff where we've seen views and thousands about shows and clips from different matches. Darkfire and Craven Rage is the match that I mean, it's just literally taken off like Darkfire. And we asked Darkfire that question when he was here with you last month. But I mean, I would have to think then we're talking about all this recognition for WCE and for you as well. I mean, the pressure is on. I think maybe to have even a bigger 2023 than 2022. I mean, what's your thoughts on some of that?
And that's the goal is to make 2023 the big year. 2022 was great. I had a great year. I ended up with a positive winning record, so I can't complain about that. It was a good year, but 2023 is going to be my year. This is the year I want, and I am calling my shot now. I do have a rain check for the interstate openweight title as well. That was given up to me from management in WC for missing fight or fright due to COVID. So, and I have the right to cash that in. I have to cash in ahead of time and announce, but I get it any time this season. Any show this season, I get the title shot. Now I don't know when that's going to be. Haven't decided, but I will be watching very carefully the champions and the challengers and all that stuff going on this year. I will have my eye on the interstate title very closely. because that is something that is still on my list of things to accomplish in backyard wrestling.
So it sounds like, before I get to some more comments, that you're eyeing something here in 2023. Is that fair to say?
Oh yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I mean, I'll certainly maybe follow up with that. But first, let me get to some more comments here. Prince Charles says, speaking of awards, I'm declaring myself best commentary of WCE in 2022. I'll give an endorsement for that. I'll give a vote if that's the case. I think that that's a no-brainer, hands down. Prince
Oh yeah.
Charles definitely best on the microphone when it comes to commentary in wrestling
He loves
championship
Craven.
entertainment. Yep. Oh, we know that. Listen, we had him on here, and he certainly pledged his allegiances to Craven Rage, of course, the ruler of the WCE art. And speaking of Craven Rage has another response there for you, because Craven Rage is here, and that's what he does. True words. You've got the only win against me in my career. But honestly, I know that it eats at your soul and mine that you fall into me. And yeah, I know the fact is that I'm just that good, and I'm the longest defending reigning champion in WCE history. But however, I'm the one who destroyed you, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you again. Maybe champion versus champion, RCW champion, and undisputed champion, Universal Grand Slam Wisconsinite, to see who's the best champion. So, I mean, if they're hearing that on what Craven Rage has said here, I mean, you think this is for him trying to, let's say, maybe skip over everybody else here and forget the open challenge? What do you make of these comments?
Well, same thing I said. Was the same thing, Craven, that I said to Adonis Felios earlier on the stream and everyone. First one through that curtain on Showtime, it's your shot. So if you show up early, Craven, if you want to get a shot at this, because I'm sure there's going to be a long line when the season premieres.
But he's a champion. He's the undisputed champion. He's the Universal Grand Slam Wisconsinite champion. Does that give him the right to skip over everybody else, or no?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
Craven, I mean, as much as I would fancy another match with Craven Rage, it's not necessary at this time. I want this belt to be elevated, and that means defending against people that maybe I haven't wrestled before. I want to do dream matches. I want to make this go crazy, and that's what the intention is at this time.
All right, that's fair. I can certainly respect that. Let me get to some more comments here, because I have some new people in here. And this
Ooh.
individual, do you know an Eric E. Forsyth? Because he says here, year 2023 is going to be the Mecca takeover, and he gives a bunch of, I guess, mean emojis that says Mecca Hood, and then he's also says, checking this out, gotta get intel before we strike. Any idea on who this
Oh,
person is?
I think I have a hunch.
You do,
And
yeah.
honestly, I hope this person could potentially show up at that open challenge. I would.
Interesting.
He is also a Wisconsin backyard legend, I would say. The
Hmm.
Meccas go far back, as far as I know. And Eric Mecca, Tim Mecca, they are legends in our state. And like I said, my goal is not to just defend this against the active roster, it's to face against the future roster, people of the past that I've never gotten the chance to face. And hey, I'm open to that. If the Meccas want to strike and take over, by all means, I'll be at the gate waiting for the takeover.
Well, I have to ask a follow-up question to you, the resident rock star Shawn Jovi. And I mean, is there anybody out there that you really would like to face, let's say, regardless of the open challenges? Is there anybody out there in different places that you say, you know what? I want to face off with that person, whether you faced off with them prior or did not face off with them.
There's definitely a list. Is it a written down list? Absolutely not. I'm not that
Okay.
well prepared. I'm not that well prepared, but I will
And
say there are definitely a number of people I would love to face again. A lot of people in Wisconsin backyard wrestling history I would love to face for the first time. That was kind of my goal. Like when Nicholas Crenson and I wrestled at Fighter Fright Day 1. He's been around a long time too, and I never got to wrestle him. Same with James Marshall. They have been around a long time. Yes, I know I'm mispronouncing his name. It's what the resident rock star does.
uh,
But it's it's one of those things where I want to face the very best, and I want to see where I line up against those people.
I find that fascinating, though, in the fact that your careers overlap so much with Crenson and Marshall, and yet you didn't face off with them all those years. Was there ever that, hey, I want to go against them, or that curiosity? I mean, walk me through
Well,
that.
a lot of it is social media wasn't booming as hard as it is now.
Sure.
I met them years later, and to my surprise, they used to backyard wrestle in Appleton around the time I was doing my stuff in De Pere. And that's like a half hour apart, and I would have had no idea. I didn't know about it until it was pretty much too late. So
Mm.
otherwise, I would have been in all those other feds like FBWA and YWL and all those other backyard promotions that existed in Wisconsin before my time or even during.
All right, that makes some sense. Good answer. And Craven Rage says, "I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the Mecca show up." Boy, Craven Rage just wants everybody to show up because he can say that he's the greatest and he's the goat, and he just gets through everybody. But I think right now he's got his own troubles though. Before we get to some closing thoughts here from you, the resident rock star Shawn Jovi, because I think that Craven Rage is probably going to be curious to hear from what our guest Monday night Kodak Kid is going to have to say on his injury update status. I mean, what's your
Ooh,
thoughts on that situation about Kodak Kid? He's going to be with us next Monday live around 9 p.m. Eastern time on Sportswire Radio. I mean, what do you make of that whole situation there?
Kodak and I actually are go back a little ways before we even met each other, actually, and that's why I'm excited to see him come back. Kodak, his brother Dandy Dan, used to wrestle a couple shows with me back in the day, and honestly, he was probably one of the best opponents I had in that time frame.
Sure.
And when I met Kodak several years later, maybe like 10 years down the road from that, I got to reflect and I got to wrestle him, and I will definitely say he is like his brother, very, very talented, very, 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 very into wrestling, and he has a heavy passion for this business. And I want to face Kodak when he comes back at one point. If I'm still holding this the time, which I'm sure I will be, I would love to face Kodak, but I will be tuning in Monday as well to be seeing what Kodak has to say. I can't wait to see him back in the ring because he's a very good wrestler. Very good.
Absolutely. He definitely is somebody that I think a lot of people are going to be curious to see if he's back in action in 2023. And that'll be next Monday on Sports Wire Radio. So, very, very excited about that. And Craven Rage is going to be in the house. And you know, Craven is going to have something to say here. And I think Eric has a comment here about you. He says, Shawn is a legend in his own right and would make a great target to get straight back into the game for a comeback since he's on a red hot streak right now. Nothing but respect for the Jovi brand.
Thank you.
All right. I mean,
Appreciate
that's
that.
very nice words from him. And Craven Rage, believe it or not, he's got something nice to say about you. You ready?
Oh,
Calls you a legend.
ooh. Well, I appreciate that. You
There's,
know,
there's
and I mean, despite the history Craven and I have, he really is one hell of a competitor, and I do look forward to the next time him and I actually do get to face off. If and when that'll happen, who knows? But I would definitely say Craven is one of the better opponents I've ever had, and has given me some of the best matches I've ever had. Win, lose, or draw, doesn't matter. He elevated my career by a lot, and WCE in general has gotten me back on the launch pad that I fell off of years ago. So I really really appreciate the kind words from Eric and Craven. I guess it it's 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 nice to feel like I haven't lost a beat in what I've been doing the last couple of years compared to what I did like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so on years ago. It's kind of nice to feel like I'm back in my element, and that's what 2023 is. I spent a year getting back in. 2023 is the year I go all out.
So do you feel fair to say then you feel rejuvenated right now?
Yes, the goal of the off season for me this year was to find the inner Jovi that may or may not be connected to my so-called pseudo father, John Bon Jovi himself,
I
as
was
I
going to
call him.
ask you, it's funny. After knowing you now for I think about 7 or 8 months, I was going to wonder, maybe you're kind of like John Bon Jovi's illegitimate son, or maybe
I
he's
like,
an uncle of yours. I mean, you guys look a little bit alike in the face.
well, like I said, I call him my pseudo father because like he's not my dad, but I mean he is a Jovi, so I mean we'll just call him a stepfather figure or a pseudo dad, whatever
Well,
you want to call him.
I should probably tell you the story on the air here. You'll probably chuckle, but when I
Okay.
was a little kid, because I'm from New York, obviously, and they used to call me Baby Bon Jovi. I don't know if I really resembled Mr. Bon Jovi, but that was kind of my claim to fame. When I was a kid, they would call me Baby Bon Jovi, and I still might have the locks. I don't know if I quite would say that I'm Mr. Bon Jovi, but you obviously could certainly make that case. But I thought you would chuckle at that story a little bit there. But
I love it.
Craven Rage here says, even though Shawn Jovi is a legend, but however, he is a fallen legend, especially to me. And he also points 16 years for Adonis Phillips. I believe that's 16 years coming up in April that Rona's
For
Championship
RCW.
Wrestling will have started. Yep. So that would make sense here. And
Yep.
also, we have here from, I believe I can say, Mr. Mecca, Craven Rage.
Mhm.
Your talent hasn't gone unnoticed, as well as my friend. All the major rage I hear from, I believe we can say it, Timothy Mecca, about this up and coming superstar. Boy, I tell you what, it looks like shots might be fired here on Wrestling Championship Entertainment. It looks like we very well could be seeing some wrestlers from the past and some new names and some new championships that were familiar. I mean, there is a lot going on here. And that is why we love our friends over at Wrestling Championship Entertainment, who I want everybody to follow. Again, WCE Heat on Facebook, YouTube, WCEHeat.com, where you can get more information, whether it's on merchandise, past shows, anything related to all of our superstars, and especially our guest here, the resident rock star, Shawn Jovi. And before I get to closing thoughts here, Nicholas Crenson's going to be on here in about 5 or 10 minutes from now. But is there anything else that you might want to say to, let's say, whether it's WC Heat fans, Sportswire fans, or maybe even RCW fans who've been listening in here tonight?
Um, well, yeah. It's been an honor to be on your show. Obviously, Tom, you're a great guy, a great host. I always love being on here.
Oh,
Um,
appreciate that.
and for the fans who tune in to watch it, whether it's me, you, whoever's on one day or another, keep tuning in, keep supporting this guy. And if you want to support me, follow me on YouTube. The handle's at RCW Rules. You can search Jovi's vlog or Shawn Jovi. You'll find me. I'm honestly not that hard to find. Um, and of course, you guys should subscribe to WCE. You should subscribe to Sportswire Radio for Tom here if you haven't before.
No, I
Um,
appreciate that. I appreciate the Sportswire plug.
I'm a big fan.
I
You
appreciate that
know,
very much. I certainly, and we've gotten a lot of new followers the last few months. I think we're up to over 500 followers on Facebook,
you
and
are.
we had one of our most recent shows get over 1,000 views. So I appreciate the support, but I most importantly want everybody to follow you because your vlogs are always some of my favorite ones. I even saw you got some new vlog utensils and supplies that are going to help us. I saw a new GoPro out
Yep.
there. I think you purchased, so I think the next couple
Yeah.
of vlogs are going to be even better because you're going to have
Yep.
some new tools to make the vlogs even better.
Yep. And I have been kind of messing around and trying to find ways to make the vlog new, interesting, and kind of give it a refreshment for the new year. And Since I've done that, actually, my viewership's gone up by about 10 or 20 views. So,
Oh, okay.
slow and steady wins the race.
Absolutely.
So
Listen, I've been doing this
it's
4 years.
going up.
Trust me, I know all about slow and steady in the race, and I'm coming up on my 4 year anniversary and doing this next week. And I always tell everybody that when I started doing this, there was no streaming like StreamYard, and there was really no Zoom. I started it on Skype, and all we had to post our content was SoundCloud. I was on just SoundCloud. You had to go to me on an audio only, and we didn't have all these tools. We're talking 4 years ago. So I mean, you think about where we've
Yeah, technology's
come from,
fast.
and it's a totally different world here. And also, I do have some more comments before I get to Crenson, so we're gonna hang on tight here for a few more minutes. Well, Eric, I definitely love for you to step into my yard. That is, of course, from Mr. Craven Rage. So I think that maybe is something I'll ask Craven when he's on next Monday. And Mr. Eric says, watching and hearing from and with Timothy Mecca has created a new hunger I haven't had in a while. Might have to get a front row seat to this dream match if it happens between Rage and Jovi. Well, I'll tell you what, for the RCW championship, it would be a dream. And but that's up to Shawn Jovi because it's Shawn Jovi's championship. And he decides right now, and he's got an open challenge that almost anybody in the wrestling world is going to have to decide who comes out of the apron first. Listen, if Roman Reigns, if he doesn't come out first, he ain't getting that shot. CM Punk, if Tony Khan lets him out of his contract, he doesn't get into that. He doesn't break through the curtain first. He doesn't get that shot. Doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter. You don't come out first, you're not getting that title shot because Shawn Jovi, the resident rock star, has set the rules. My friend, I want to give you the floor. Anything else you want to plug, share, say before the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, comes on here? Floor is yours.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and listening to my story. I'd like to thank you, Tom Brice, for being such a great host, and your hospitality is always appreciated when I'm on the show. I would like, if anybody hasn't followed me on YouTube before, please give my channel a look. Look up Shawn Jovi. Look up Jovi's vlog. You'll find it. Just give it a look, and hopefully, if you like it, you please subscribe. I would love to have another follower, or 2 or 3 or 5. Like
No,
I'm
ask
trying
for
to
like
get out there.
10,000. Listen, don't put a limit. Get as many of them as you can because
Yeah,
we all need
take
the
what I.
followers.
Oh yeah, everyone needs a follower. So I mean, it's the following of gotten since coming back has been really nice, and I think everyone who's been on this journey with me or tunes into the journey with me, it's it's been a wild ride for these last 15, 16 years. I've been doing this half my life now.
You
I'm
do know
30.
that you should have said almost one wild night like the 2001 Bon Jovi live album.
Oh,
You missed
that's a
that
good
one
one
there.
too. Yeah, I don't know how I missed it. Honestly, I used to have the DVD of the One Last Wild Night concert at
Yep.
the end of that tour.
And I don't know if
So
you remember this or not, by the way. I don't know if you remember this, but VH1 actually played the concert when the album came out. I don't know if you remember that at all, but they actually had
I think
had
I do.
played it. Okay, all right, fair enough. I figured you would have appreciated that. Yeah, I figured that the
Yeah,
the one wild night would have
vaguely, but I vaguely remember it. But yeah,
Okay. All right. Yep. That was the days when VH1 played rock videos still, and Bon Jovi they had played. I want to give a shout out before I let you go to my very good friend Jimmy Gorman, and Jimmy's one of my guys because when I had season tickets to the New York Islanders, the hockey team, Jimmy used to sit in my row, and I miss Jimmy, and I haven't seen him since before COVID, and I keep saying I'm going to get out there to Long Island, and I haven't got out there yet, so I have to figure out a way, and I hope that Jimmy is well, and Jimmy's always been one of my favorites and on and off the ice. And Mr. Mecca says, "Oh, Craven on next Monday," and Craven has confirmed. And Adonis Felio says, "Can't wait to get a first shot. That title is mine." Well, again, we're going to find out.
well,
We're going to
early.
find out. But I'll tell you what, the resident rock star, Shawn Jovi, I know you're a busy man. You've got interviews lined up. You've got vlogs to get to. You've got concerts to go to. And you've got maybe a Zoom call with Bon Jovi to talk about maybe the will that he's going to put you in and, all the different
Oh
stuff out
yeah,
there. Maybe you'll give us insight on maybe new Bon Jovi music or a tour. So I know you're a busy man. And I thank you and thank you for all you do for us. And congratulations on the news here with the RCW championship.
thank you so much, Tom. It's been a
I appre-
pleasure as always.
I definitely appreciate that. And also here, before I let you go, a few more comments. Craven Rage says, I would love for you to come to check out our shows and be a part of Wrestling Championship Entertainment. Working on that. Jimmy Gorman, yep, love you too, bro. Thank you for everything. I definitely will see you soon. And Prince Charles says, don't make me laugh, Adon. Because, of course, Adonis Felios and Prince Charles have their issues, and we'll talk about that next time. But, my friend, I can't thank you enough, and we'll speak with you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom.
All right, and that was the resident rock star Shawn Jovi, and guess who's back? He's back! And ladies and gentlemen, he can't stop laughing because he's got a lot to say. And he just flew in. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. We just saw him at WWE SmackDown about 24 hours ago. He had interviews left and right that was asking him about what's going on with the bloodline, what's going on with Heyman, what's going on with WWE being sold to the Saudis, and he's here with us. He's granted us his first exclusive interview in 2023. He is one of our favorites here on Sportswire Radio. He is one of the guys that I know is going to get some gold here, and he's also looks much better on the video than the resident rock star Shawn Jovi just did. So with it, wait for it. Further ado here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show. Pro wrestling star here from Wrestling Championship Entertainment. He is the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson. My friend, how are you?
I am doing wonderful, Reverend. Oh man, yeah, I kind of was watching that and I was like, oh man, Jovi must be having some internet troubles there. And I was like, should I say anything? Nah. He'll probably get those fixed next time you have him on. Luckily, I work for a company that does deal with that, and I luckily have
you're
worked on
Nicholas
computers all my life.
You, like I said, you were just at SmackDown 24 hours ago. You had people left of us, and I heard Dave Meltzer was calling you. I heard Short Rose Slap was calling you. I heard, listen, everybody out there was calling you to say the Nicholas Crenson, the new Messiah. What is going on here in the WWE? But you know what? We'll ask you about that another time or in a little while because we have a lot to digest here. Go ahead.
So I do want to kind of touch on that. Like I will say this to anybody who is a wrestling fan. If there is a difference between watching it live on watching it on TV and seeing it in person, the crowd there was insane the whole night. And really some of the stuff like the Intercontinental title match was amazing.
The opening match, the opening match. Yep.
Right, like actually before that, they actually played a video package because Braun has family in Wisconsin, and there was an incident back in I want to say it was 2019. It was a few years back in Waukesha, that young kid lost his life. Braun actually teamed up with the Green Bay Packers to make custom boots.
They showed it on the beginning of the show. I don't know if you caught it yet, the replay.
Yeah, and like that match was great. Honestly, anytime you get to see, I have seen Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens in one way or another have matches with each other since 2006.
El Generico versus Kevin Steen, right?
Yeah. And honestly, I'm going to say this, right now the rumors are, you got they're splitting up the titles. You got The Rock going after one, after Roman. You got Cody or Drew going after the other. Honestly, if you're going to split up the titles now, really, the gold match is a triple threat for Roman's title, and you put it on Sami.
Well, he's starting to win over people where, you know what? I mean, everybody says if you believe in the internet stuff, we try on Sportswire because we speak as you know, so many professional wrestlers really try not to quote that stuff. But if you believe everything you hear on there, Cody Rhodes is supposed to be the guy. But Sami Zayn, I mean, he's won over the fans like there's nobody in a long time. And I mean, they're making this real interesting here.
Sami Zayn is one of the people you study if you want to be a wrestler.
Well, I think listen, I would even say for what he's done with his character, I mean, look at where he was 9 months ago to where he is now. I mean, it's really one of the more remarkable stories, and we're not even getting into is in-ring work that you talked about as El Generico and the wars in NXT. But what this guy has done, I mean, he's put himself in a position where you can say, you know what? This guy very well could be that guy to topple Roman Reigns. I mean, the fans are behind him. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Cody Rhodes, you hear, but I don't know. Sami Zayn's got the fans right now behind him, I think.
There's two people in WWE that have all the factors of character work and wrestler, and those are Sami Zayn, one we don't see too often right now, but because I think he's injured, Johnny Gargano.
Well, Gargano we saw on Raw, and he's in this group, thing with Dexter Lumis, and they've been with The Miz. I mean, you've seen that. I mean, he would be one person, but I kind of think he's kind of too far down the card at the moment to go to that level.
Yeah.
But Sami Zayn is got a shot. I mean, so certainly, I'm sure that the powers that be, you've definitely been speaking to, because like I said, we saw you there at SmackDown. Everybody was wondering about the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson. But I'll come back to all that because I really want to talk to you about Wrestling Championship Entertainment. And I also really want to talk to you about this development here, as I'm sure you heard because you were in the back here before you were going to come on here, with the resident rock star Shawn Jovi restarting Ronis Championship Wrestling, and to have this championship belt that we're going to see to kick off all WCE shows, which we think are going to start in April as we continue to keep our fingers crossed. Mother Nature will be aligned with us. We think we're going to have that. But, I mean,
ABC.
What is your reaction to all that here with Shawn Jovi and this development here with the RCW World Championship coming back into fruition?
I kind of like it because it means there's more to fight for. There's more reasons to fight. We've got the interstate title, which we'll touch on those subjects someday. We've got
Shawn Jovi did. I got to ask you about that. I will ask you on that in a little bit.
But the thing with the RCW title is it has, out of all the titles, it has the history. Like the interstate title, we're still growing. The Wisconsinite title, we're still growing. Like every title, the two WCE titles, those are still growing, and we are still adding to the history to them. Where with the RCW title, we have this established history already in there. So we don't have to worry about establishing the title. We just have to make sure we can bring that title's history and keep it relevant. And it is Shawn Jovi, so I don't think that's going to be too hard of a task for him.
But let me ask you a follow-up question, as we are here with, of course, the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, pro wrestling star here from Wrestling Championship Entertainment. We've spoke about this with you in the past. Now, you haven't held a major championship now. I'm going on 17 years, if I'm not mistaken. And I would think now that because we have an addition to another championship here in WCE, this has got to give you, of all people, I think personally, the most motivation, because you were this close to getting gold earlier this year in WCE, which you mentioned the Interstate Championship with James Marshall. I mean, so does that maybe bode for you in what I just said? Or, I mean, what's your reaction to that take?
Well, you do bring up an interesting point with that. Like, last time, like, I'll say it, January 21st, 2006. That is a long time to go without holding a major title. And yes, I would be interested in holding the RCW title. I mean, another person who takes that title very seriously is Darkfire. Because that's a title that he has helped establish.
I was going to get to him next. He was on the agenda because obviously there's been some things still happening there. Yep.
Honestly, the idea of going after that title does intrigue me because of several factors. Plus, I don't have a win over Jovi, and I kind of need to correct that.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up because speaking of which, with the resident rock star Shawn Jovi, we're kind of firing all cylinders here on Sportswire with this. But we had spoke about the fact that in kind of the heyday of RCW and really up until recently, you and Shawn Jovi never crossed paths, which I thought was so fascinating because, I mean, you and him have had such long storied careers here in professional wrestling and in backyard wrestling and elsewhere. And I mean, that has to be on the mind for you then to I would certainly say now that he's holding this championship that he's brought back that you can certainly now really make yourself for a huge 2023 by not only squaring off with him but taking his championship, and he declared that he's doing an open challenge and he's deciding who comes out first. I mean, what's your thoughts on all that?
I think it's interesting that he's willing to do an open challenge. Some people kind of don't like doing open challenges because it doesn't let you prepare. But also, this is Shawn Jovi. You know, how do I say this with everybody in the locker room? This season is the season that the training wheels go off. The gloves come off. It's all business this season, and here's the interesting thing is like I posted that little clock
Yes.
earlier, and I already have prior engagements, our first show back, which will get touched on at some point, I assume.
Okay.
But as for Jovi, I'm gonna bide my time. He knows I'm the type to bide my time, and I am looking forward to facing him again.
But let me ask you though something, because you have talked about the fact about biding time, and I certainly think that that might actually be a good strategy here because we saw Adonis Felio, we saw Craven Rage. Once again, I mean, I'm sure other people in the back are thinking the same thing. Let's just go take a shot at Shawn Jovi, the resident rock star. Let's knock him off. But I mean, you've bid your time for almost 17 years without a major championship, and I mean, it's got to burn at you. It's got to eat at you. I mean, how much longer can you buy time? Doesn't this have to be the year? I mean, you put the clock emoji up earlier on, but I mean, you've got to win a championship in 2023, I would think.
Oh, I definitely won a championship in 2023, but what's that famous line from was it Elvis Presley? Didn't he say that only fools rush in?
I think you might be right, and unfortunately, of course, we certainly send our condolences to his daughter, Lisa Marie, who left us a few short days ago. Certainly, rest in peace. Who certainly had an interesting life in her own right, and former starlet. But yeah, that's a good line. I'll give you that.
Because here's the thing, Tom. Like, you can get frustrated. You can be frustrated. I could be frustrated about not having a title for this long, and at times it does eat away at me. I will admit that, but I'm not going to just make the mistake of hastily going into the ring and fighting somebody. I am going to plan everything out. I'm going to make sure people understand that when I get in the ring, it's not a mistake that I'm challenging somebody, that I have thought of every possible situation that could happen, and I also accept the fact that yes, in some situations I can plan for everything and do everything just right and still fail.
That's fair. I certainly give you that, but I have a comment actually directed at you, and this individual has certainly made themselves a big presence here tonight on Sportswire Radio, and I want to be able to bring this comment so you can see it. And I believe you know him. His name might be Tim Mecca. That might ring a bell. He says Crenson. Well, he says Crescent, but Crenson, my old buddy, pal, he said pal, How are you, Slapnuts? You want to get smacked by a mecha girl again? You want to address some of this here by this individual who certainly made himself into a big presence?
Good old Timothy Mecca. Man, I will say that Tim is honestly one of the funniest guys you could ever be around, and he does bring up our old history of basically him destroying me. And you know what, Tim, you used to kick my ass, though nowadays it's kind of hard for you to kick anything.
Ooh, wow, boy. I mean, that's really giving it back, I guess. That's really giving it back there to Mr. Mecca.
Said with love, but Tim Mecca is honestly one of the reasons why WCE we have what we have, and honestly, he is a legend. He is always going to be a legend.
Can I actually ask you about that? Because I heard a little bit from Shawn Jovi, the resident rock star, on it, but I know you had certainly a front row seat, and you had certainly some different battles out there, which I'm sure crossed paths with Mr. Mecca, and certainly in the different places that he wrestled a part of. But I mean, what made him such a legend here? What made him such a legend in Wisconsin backyard wrestling and elsewhere?
Tim got it. He got, like, it wasn't just, yeah, you know, Tim Mecca was a big dude, like Samoa Joe big.
Okay.
But he also got, like, he got that it was more than just the moves. It was telling the stories that we want to tell. He had both the power, the size, and agility. His, like, one of his biggest moves that he, like, honestly, he had so many ways to beat opponents too. He had his mechanizer, which is an interesting move. Haven't seen it in a while. The mecha driver, the blue crush. He's also one of the few people that I've ever seen do a release vertical suplex and toss the person halfway across the ring.
Wow.
But it's also like he knew he was good. He knew he was good, and he basically, when he got in the ring, he was the man. He was the man. He would always tell you how good he was. And, you know, whenever he was out in the ring, and you get him in real life, he was also the most humblest person you could meet. And he was also the jokester of the group. He was fun to be around. And really, he's one of the reasons why we have WC. Or what really, actually, he's the reason why we still have James Marshall.
Really, would you like to elaborate on that a little bit before I get to some more comments? I mean, why is he the reason that we have James Marshall?
He kind of helped convince James to not take another path. So,
okay. Let me ask you another follow-up question here about the mechas, and I'm going to get to the other mecha in a second, but I had asked Shawn Jovi this question. I don't know if you had heard what the resident rockstar had to say, but let's say even if the mechas didn't wrestle, even if they weren't a part as active talent, would there be a place for them in WCE where maybe the talent in the back, some of the upcoming talent, or even just some of the veteran wrestlers could maybe learn something from the mechas? I mean, is there a role you think that they could both play possibly maybe in this company, even if they aren't active talent?
yes, especially Tim. Especially Tim Mecca, because Tim is somebody who can definitely teach a lot of your younger guys certain things. Eric as well, but that is I want to say a stupid question, but really it's a no-brainer question, because really Tim Mecca and Eric Mecca, to a certain extent, both have stuff that they can teach people. Especially, there are a few talent that could definitely learn some things from them. And then Eric Mecca, I honestly, I've never gotten to wrestle Eric. I don't think one-on-one, and I always wanted to work with him. And honestly, Eric is actually how I discovered like backyard wrestling and met Tim and all that stuff because I went to high school with him.
Okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting kind of story there. And I know it was kind of an obvious question, but I thought it would be kind of important because we still have some talent. We have some young talent that is learning, and maybe with the resumes of even Eric and certainly Tim, that I think you would benefit not just them but the entire company as a whole. And I'll also throw out here for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, we would bring on the Meccas anytime they want to speak, whether it's Tim or Eric or both of them. We certainly would love to give them the floor. So if they want to talk about anything that's on their minds, certainly floor would be yours for them to have here with us. And I do have some more comments. Also have here first Adonis Felios. I'll get to the Drip King in a second. He says, "Evening, Mr. Messiah." Eric Mecca says, "I can't wait to hunt Nicholas Crenson like the Fiend again. Let us in, Crenson." I think he says Crenson, but I think he meant Crenson. He also says, though, "Absolutely love me some Nicholas Crenson. I will never forget when we tagged up against Timmy and Chris Mecca in a TLC match." You want to elaborate on that for a second for those that are watching and listening here and what made that match so special?
Oh God. Honestly, the only thing that made that match special to me was the fact that I had to get like 5 stitches afterwards.
Oh, that hurts. That hurts.
Yeah, especially when your tag team partner gets you set up a ladder, set up a simple wrestling ladder match, spot you could see. You have one ladder opened up on its side. You have another ladder on top of it, teetering back and forth. Then your opponent's partner puts you in a headlock, puts you over one side of the ladder, while your partner gets dropped on the other side of the ladder. Yeah, I ended up with a 2.5 centimeter gash in my head and had to get 5 stitches. There's a good photo of that, how much blood I was losing that match. Sadly, I got taken to the back because I actually was trying to get back out there too.
Well, that's why they call you the new Messiah. So I certainly will give you credit for that. Adonis Felio says, "I owe you a win dated back Fighter Fright Day 1. Make no mistake about it, we will go at it again in WCE. But the results are going to be different. You can drip on that." You want to address Adonis Felios for a second before we come back to the Meccas?
Adonis. You forget one thing, I made you tap out. But also, you do have a point. You kind of owe me because at some point we will probably meet again because right now we are both one-on-one with each other. Sadly, Adonis, when I do get to you, yeah, I am not taking it easy on you anymore.
All right. I'll tell you what, I think Adonis Felios, the Drip King, there's an old expression, be careful what you wish for. So you might want to be careful what you wish for in this circumstance. And Eric also says, "Those damn ladders. Tim Mecca lives and breathes wrestling. His wrestling IQ is incredible." And we'll certainly see if maybe we can tap into that. And I would highly encourage that Wrestling Championship Entertainment might want to consider that. And Eric also tells me, FVWA was the roots for most wrestling in our area. Talk to me about FVWA for a second, because obviously there's a lot of people, myself, who weren't around, obviously me being in another part of the country. FVWA, talk to me about that for a second.
We can go even further back. I think there was one called XWA as well. But when I got introduced to backyard wrestling in 2003, actually 2004 was about the time. There was 2 things. One was called FVWA, which was Fox Valley Wrestling Alliance.
Okay.
And then there was another one called YWL, Youth Wrestling League and Graveyard Wrestling, which were kind of combined together. First show I went to was a FVWA show, and it was one of the most wonderful shows I ever got to see. Honestly, backyard wrestling is always going to be special thing to me just because it's the atmosphere, it's the energy that we have. And really, Tim Mecca was one of the first people I watched wrestle, and so it was Tim Mecca, guys like Craig Covenant, Joey Terrifying, who now has wrestled on AEW as Joey Avalon or Joey Jet.
Sure, sure, I know the name.
Here's one for you. A certain Leprechaun used to wrestle FEWA.
Hornswoggle? Who, by the way, I saw at 2 o'clock in the morning the other day because they were replaying the 2008 Royal Rumble.
Oh, God.
They were replaying it because I actually still have the WWE Network. I can't actually quite say how I get it here because we are in the radio business on Sportswire, but I still get the WWE Network. And they had Hornswoggle, and it was kind of funny how Finley kind of saved him, and I watched the whole Rumble at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Boy, what a small world.
Backyard wrestling is it's as much as you'll have those people out there that'll kind of always not like it. Backyard wrestling is one of the pulses of wrestling as a whole.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that, without a doubt.
And I definitely will recommend if anybody wants to find any FEWA stuff, there is a YouTube channel that actually has a couple of the old like FEWA music videos and maybe some of the matches. I believe it's called MVE videos. And honestly, I would definitely recommend finding that.
Yeah, if you have anything and you want to DM me, you want to share it, we'll wind up putting it up on the screen here for anybody that is listening and watching. We'll put it up here over. And I also do have some comments while you do that. Eric says, Tim was the co-creative and owner behind the company. Also, Tim says he would love to do an interview. And what I will say to that, Tim, is I will message you and Eric. I will message you guys after I get off the air here, and we will set something up here within the next few weeks on Sportswire. So that will be something that we'll consider done. The resident rock star Shawn Jovi thanks me for having him on the air. Pleasure is all ours here on Sportswire Radio. Also here, Eric says, I totally agree with you, Nicholas Crenson. I've always wanted a dream match against you. It would be fun to reminisce and see how far we could push each other. It would be an honor, truly. Let me follow up with that because I do have some more questions on WCE. But speaking of that, I mean, do you think a company like WCE could, let's say, maybe house that match between you and Eric Mecca? Or what's your perspective on that?
I would love to do that match just because it really hasn't, like he said, we've wrestled as partners, but we never actually had a true chance to wrestle each other in the ring one-on-one. And well, between like when we partnered together and now, like we are different. We are definitely different people than we used to be. So it's an even more fresher dynamic now.
All right, that's certainly an interesting point. We'll certainly see if that happens. We've still got a little bit more time until the start of the WCE season, and we certainly hope that we see some of this, and we'll get the Mecca's perspective on. And I do have here a link from the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, which we will try to copy and paste that right now here on Sportswire Radio. We won't let it play out because of the volume purposes, but we will actually put the link up here. Let's see if everybody can get it. And I believe it should pop up now. I actually posted it to a few of our pages. So if you are on social media out there, you should see it on my Facebook page at Sportswire Radio, YouTube's page at Sportswire Radio. So it should come up here. That's where you can find the link. And what I also wound up doing here for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, I just subscribed to the page here. So that means we can watch some of this stuff. And we've got content here. I just see it here, the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, going back from 2000. I mean, think about that for a second. I didn't even realize that you would have been able to put that content out there from 2000. Wow.
So this channel hasn't been active in a long time, but mostly because all the content they need to put up has already been put up. But
Right.
basically, that was a channel I believe was started by somebody by the name of Psycho Rob,
Okay.
who back in the day was actually called the Messiah Backyard Wrestling.
Mm.
But that has content from not just FEWA. It might have some YWL stuff, but it's FEWA. I want to say XWL was it called YWL, and Psycho Rob's fed that was around the same. That actually was a little bit longer and kind of merged with FEWA at one point, and that called Psycho Fed.
Mm. And what's so fascinating is this to me is that, I mean, in 2001, which to me doesn't feel that long ago, the videos look like they came out of like the 60s and 70s, which is like so fascinating because 2000 to me wasn't that really long ago. I mean, and I'm not that old. It's just amazing to me.
Yeah, well, you also have to look at it this way that HD technology didn't start coming out until 2005, 2006.
Well, YouTube, I think, really came into play about 2007, I think. I remember that's when I first started watching YouTube.
It started in 2005 and then started blowing up in 2007.
There you go. That's how I remember it. I remember in 2007, all of a sudden, YouTube kind of changed the world. So that's certainly some fair points here. And we are on Sportswire Radio. And if you like what you hear from us, you can continue to give us a like on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. So please support our friends over at Wrestling Championship Entertainment. You can do that by following their page on Facebook at WC Heat, which is Wrestling Championship Entertainment, WCHeat.com, and also YouTube at WC Heat. We are joined by the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, who I think is primed and poised to get some gold here for the first time in 17 years. And he is up for a big 2023 in other places. Who knows who it's going to be against? And my name is the Reverend Tom Brice. I want to come back to Darkfire for a second because obviously we saw Darkfire and you are still going at it on some of the Shawn Jovi vlogs here. And I mean, it seems like to me you could very well, as you touched upon in a way, be occupied coming up here in 2023 because I feel in a way that it seems like, at least from what we've watched, this doesn't mean that's to be the case, the new Messiah Nicholas Crenson, that you and Darkfire aren't done by a long shot.
No, we're not. Darkfire, I thought I was done with you after I choked you out. But to be fair, you had to get your revenge and bloody me. And then I end up getting a fine because of that. I don't know how that works. I will say that Mr. Packer has received several emails and phone calls from a lawyer because, yeah, I was the one, since I was the one who got attacked, yeah, we kind of don't think I should be the one getting a fine. So, as for that nightmare that I've already said I was going to be for Mr. Packer, Darkfire, you do realize I've been taking it easy on you. Right now, WC management and Mark, Mr. Packer have stated that we cannot touch each other. Though you seem to already have yourself preoccupied with all that intergalactic nonsense. Apparently somebody put a bounty on his head. I'm gonna kind of wash my hands of that because if I'm gonna do something to you, Darkfire, you'll know it's me. I don't need to hide what I do. But also, Darkfire, I know you well, and here's the thing: the difference between somebody like me and somebody like Craven. I'm not afraid to target you and break you mentally. See, Darkfire, I don't even have to lay a finger on you to make you suffer. So remember that. And remember, when you bring a war upon you, you bring a war not just to you,
What do you mean by that last part?
Casualties of war, Tom. Casualties of war. How do I say this? In every war, whenever you fire the first shot, you do not know who you're going to hit.
So is this maybe a tale of be careful what you wish for here when it comes to
Yes.
Darkfire?
Oh, Tom. That is the perfect analogy for this. Because Darkfire is going to have an interesting year. I am going to make him regret every decision he's made. And he's made a lot of regretful decisions, but oh my God. Be careful who you put in harm's way, my friend, because it gets really dark from here.
So would it be fair to say that even though last year Darkfire was most improved wrestler, his match with Craven Rage, everybody still watches on the Wrestling Championship Entertainment YouTube page, but this year coming up in 2023, maybe he once again takes a few steps back? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
I will say this much. It's going to be a real test for him this year. See, and I don't want to get this wrong. People get this wrong. I'm not doing this out of some malicious content, though he might think I am. It's just reality slowly creeping in. And that is the reality that you gotta be prepared to lose yourself. And Darkfire, you're going to lose yourself a lot this year. It's the simple phrase I said before, and this goes to even Adonis, Jovi, Craven. I mean, this is our third season, and boys, the training wheels are now finally off. The gloves are off. We are going to destroy each other this year.
I think, ladies and gentlemen, it sounds like here, listen, be careful what you wish for. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. But I want to come back to Eric Mecca because Eric has a comment here. He says, I am beyond grateful that I was able to bring Nicholas Crenson to an FVWA show because I can truly say that there's very few in this world who loves wrestling more or has more knowledge about wrestling history than him. True fan story. And I want to back this up, actually. I want to take a step back from this whole Dogfire situation because I've had Nicholas Crenson. I've had on countless wrestlers, as a lot of people know on Sportswire. We're very fortunate that so many people from all over the place come onto our shows and our platform, and I'm really grateful for that, especially going into my fourth year. So I'm appreciating of the longevity. But Nicholas Crenson is almost always there, and he always gives us some insight that a wrestler didn't even know about or actually converses with on the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson. He really does know a lot about wrestling. I would say he could be, after he's done in 20, 30 years now in wrestling, he could be a commentator. He could be an announcer. I mean, he really could. I mean, there's a lot that Nicholas Crenson does. I mean, your energy, your enthusiasm. I have to say this because I think I've said this on a bunch of my different shows with different wrestlers, and I don't know if you've heard this or not. You have become one of my favorites. You have definitely won me over. You have become one of my favorites. You are in the same stratosphere with the likes of Disciple, R.P. Davis, KOW's ALP, the Cumbrian Outlaw Rick Marcus, the Lawman Kyle Kennedy. I mean, you have definitely won yourself in that category there.
Well, I do thank you, Reverend Tom, for that accolade. And it's I have been in love with wrestling since I first got introduced to it in 1998.
Okay. All right.
And it's like it's basically my dad in a way you could say it's my dad's fault because he was the one who showed me it. But it was that, and just yeah, I started watching, it's just us accidentally turning on TNT, and there happened to be Goldberg versus Hulk Hogan for the WCW World
In the
Title.
Georgia Dome. Yep. Was it
Yep,
July 6th, 1998, I believe, right? Was it July
I
6th,
believe
1998?
so. That's when that's
Wow.
honestly, that's when I started watching wrestling, and then I started, checking out WWE, WWF at the time, then became
Sure.
WWE. I would also go to our old, we had a family video. I'm not sure if they had those in New York, but we had a family video. I would go there and I would rent like older pay-per-views.
No, we didn't
Like,
have Family Video. We had Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster?
oh, we had that too, but like they would have in the dollar section, they would have like a few years back of like the older pay-per-views, or you could
Okay.
pay a little extra, get the newer ones on
Sure.
VHS. And it just grew from there. I discovered ECW. And then really where the real, getting introduced to backyard wrestling through Eric is, around the time I started actually training in wrestling, and that was back in 2004. Like July will be, it's funny, July's the anniversary of me becoming a wrestling fan. This July will be my 19th year doing this.
Wow, 19. Congratulations. I mean, think about that. 19 years in the business, 19 years still going, 19 years still strong, and 25 years a wrestling fan. And certainly, I mean, listen, you think about that for a second. 25 years of knowledge in wrestling, and Nicholas Crenson's like an encyclopedia. And Tim Mecca says your knowledge of wrestling is insane, which I knew already, because I mean, I've gotten to know you for about 4 or 5, maybe a little more than
And
now,
it,
about 6 months, and I've seen that for sure.
I think I'm lapsed on some things, in the recent years, but I kind of go back and watch things. Like anybody who has an opportunity, if you have Peacock, go through and watch. Like there is so much stuff on the WWE Network or on Peacock, that WWE stuff that you can find, or you can, YouTube. YouTube is really one of the best things to happen to the wrestling community, because
Oh,
you can find
I'm glad you
so
said that. I said that to a wrestler this past week. I believe I said it. Let me see which the wrestler I said it to. And I actually said if it wasn't for YouTube, we would not. Let's think about those the days you were trying to be a wrestler. You had to basically make a tape. You had to mail it out. You had to write your address. Hope they give you a self-addressed stamp with it, and then you'd have to hope the promoter or anybody else writes to you. Now you just put your stuff up on YouTube and everybody can access it. There was a time, even 20 years ago, you couldn't do that.
Think of it. Think of this. There was a time where if you wanted to watch like any shows from the Tokyo Dome or anything from
Yep.
Japan, you had to do tape trading.
Yep.
Nowadays, you can mostly
I
find
remember
all the
tape
stuff
trading at
online.
ECW. Listen, I remember in 2000 in my drama class in school, I actually really got into ECW when it came to the tape trading. I wound up getting to know Taz and Sabu and Rob Van Dam. I knew the names, but that was kind of the old days of VHS. You'd have a kid, he would basically watch a show and he'd burn it, or he had some kind of way to do it, and you'd pay whatever it was, $5, $10, $20, and you'd buy these VHSs, and that's how you kind of became a wrestling fan. And I think that the wrestler that I wound up speaking with was Wildfire Nate Reese when he was on the show with this last week, because he's been wrestling for about 16 years. And we were talking about that with, YouTube, and how the presence of YouTube has just changed everything in the world. And I have some more comments, so let me get to them. Prince Charles says, I'm sorry, Crenson. I kind of dig the new attitude, but I was laughing a little when Darkfire busted you open. I didn't even see it coming. Prince Charles, you sure you want to say that?
I'll give it to him. I didn't even see it coming. So I will say is Darkfire is kind of learning. So I'll give him that.
Well, all right. I do have a WC question for you in a second, but I want to bring up Eric once again. He addresses me. The amount of moves this man knows in the ring and his strategies is insane. I always felt like we had a great plan going into any match we had together, which actually segues the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, and what I wanted to ask you, because as I'm sure you were aware of, which was voted by the fans, and I'm pretty sure I had also voted in this. You were named Best Feud of the Year in WCE when it came to your war with James Marshall. We touched upon Marshall a couple of different times here, but what did that mean to you to be awarded that achievement, and anything else that comes to mind?
Really, it was a no-brainer of who would get the feud of the year, because out of every feud that WCE has had in our second season, me and James literally made the company
Absolutely,
by
absolutely.
telling a elegant story of violence from April all the way to the end of the year, to play to our Iron Man match. And me and James, we're right now we're focused on different paths, but eventually I know we'll always face each other again. We're that one thing that never ends here.
Well, I mean, you did say a couple different things here. I mean, I guess you might say for now, you guys are kind of done with each other, but I have a feeling, though, you guys are never going to be done with each other. Is that the best way to phrase it?
Best way to phrase it, indeed, Tom. We've both agreed, we make wonderful violence together.
Talk about, because Eric's here with us, and I wanted to talk about the 30-minute Iron Man match, which we saw go into overtime as well. And that, to me, really also was, in my opinion, also the match of the year in WC, what you guys were able to do. We spoke about that before you guys went in the ring. We spoke about it afterwards. We had Marshall on. We've had you on. We've had other people in the back that we spoke about with. I mean, talk about that match again, and was there anything you would have did differently, but also maybe why was that match as good as it was?
Because I think the only thing I would have done differently is I would have replaced those plywood boards with doors. Honestly, the match could have been a lot more violent. Though management doesn't, at times doesn't want us to get too violent. So we make the violence we can with it. But really, I don't know if I would change anything about that match, because it was such a pleasure to be able to wrestle that long and wrestle a match where we are both testing our endurances, not just me, but James as well. And really, the only thing I would have changed is I probably would have been a little bit more aggressive with James.
I think after the 2-0 lead, I think the strategy changed. You were up 2-0 right off the bat. And I'm like, boy, Crenson's got him. You're going to blow him out. It's going to be, you're the one that's going to pitch the shot. I mean, I honestly thought that maybe that's the one thing that would have changed how you maybe wrestled that match after the early big lead.
Honestly, the main thing going into that match was make James eat his words. As soon as he said he was going to pitch a shutout, I was like, you're going to what? Because I like to make people, like I said, I like making people eat their words when they promise some elaborate things. Be it like Craven Rage thinking he was going to have an easy match with me. I took him to a certain point, but he still got the win, and he did leave me laying in that match we had. But I don't I don't make things easy for people, ever. Shawn Jovi can attest to that. James Marshall can attest to that.
Dark Fire certainly can. Adonis Velio's Craven Rage. I mean, there's a number of people in that locker room that can certainly attest to that. That's why you are as good as who you are and what you do in that ring. But I mean, I also have to ask, I mean, because kind of going back to James Marshall, and you touched upon it at the very beginning, is the Interstate Championship. Now, I know you're occupied right now. We spoke about, the RCW Championship with Rona's Championship Wrestling, but I mean, something tells me here, I mean, you're going to want your hands on something in 2023. And you did touch upon the Interstate Championship.
Oh, I definitely would love. Honestly, I'd love all the gold.
And you're gonna call yourself the belt collector now? Going 17 years without championship, now you're going to be in the belt collector.
I don't know. That's a lot of pressure to take on. I mean, it would be fun, but really, it's there's certain things in WCE that I know in the background going on, and who's to say that I won't be going after that interstate title soon? I definitely did say the last time I wrestled, after I walked out of the ring, I did look at the camera and said I called next, and
yep,
I know. Like I said, Mark Packer is dealing with those pesky lawyers that I kind of sicked at him. And I think he'll make the right decision. And eventually, I will be going after that interstate title again. Now, will I get it? That it remains to be seen. But I will have gold this year.
Well, listen, I would certainly think that you want to end the drought of 17 years, but let's talk about Mark Packer for a second, because you did touch upon Mr. Packer, our general manager here in Wrestling Championship Entertainment. And right now, you're going through this situation here to reverse the fine after what happened with you in Darkfire. But do you think that, let's say, hypothetically, let's go with the interstate first. I'll talk about the RCW Championship in a second. I'll ask you a thought on that again. But do you think it's possible? Could Packer maybe hold the situation here with the overturning of the lawsuit and the fines here, maybe against you when it comes to eventually when this interstate championship situation gets sorted out? I mean, you have a thought on that?
I think Mr. Packer is a smart individual who can make dumb decisions sometimes. And honestly, I think he is going to make the right call. Once we get everything straightened out with everything that's going on, I'm certain he'll make a reasonable decision. I know my lawyers are very reasonable with him. So, yeah. Now, does it stop me from being a nightmare for management? No, never does, because honestly, I am definitely not a company man when it comes to how I present myself, because I love WCE. I just hate the corporate part of it.
I mean, certainly, look, there are some wrestlers that might want to work with management, and others kind of beat to their own drum, and you might fall into the latter category. But before I come to Prince Charles' comment, I actually do want to make then that comparison. And let's say the RCW Championship and the WCE Championship, because obviously we spoke about it at the top with Shawn Jovi, the resident rock star, resuming the Ronas Championship Wrestling and that belt. And maybe there's an easier path then to go for that belt versus the interstate, because you did touch upon the legalities with Mark Packer. There's a situation there. There's other things that come into play. So, I mean, is it maybe fair to say to you, is it easier to maybe eventually, whoever or whatever happens with the RCW Championship, just say, you know what, frig the situation with WCE and the legal issues with Mark Packer, and if they hold it against me, I'll just go for the RCW title, because maybe I can take that title off whoever may lay claim to that eventually?
Oh God, no. No, it's not going to be easier. Like, going after any title in WCE, be it the RCW title that Jovi's bringing back, be it the interstate title, be it Craven and his Wisconsinite title, be it this new title I keep on hearing about. It isn't easy, and it's not supposed to be.
But you could make a point though that you're dealing with management right now. You and management don't see eye to eye. My point isn't. But at RCW, you have none of that. You don't have any of that. So wouldn't it be just easier to say, you know what? I'll let Jovi figure out his open challenge. I'll let him get beat up because he's going to have everybody in that back. And then whatever happens there, and whenever that time comes, from what you've said the strategy is, I'll just take that championship.
That would be so. The problem with that is, well, yes, I don't care for management. I tolerate them, and I get along. I can get along with them in a certain level. I just have never been a corporate person. But the problem with that whole thing about let Jovi get beat up and let Jovi would be an easy target is you're getting the fact that is Shawn Jovi.
I understand that. Listen, Shawn Jovi is a legend. He's the resident rock star, and that's his belt. That's his baby, and he's certainly not going to let anybody take that away with him without a fight. And I'm sure he's going to have tricks up his sleeve. I do agree with you on that.
And I'm 0-2 against Shawn Jovi. So
I understand that.
Will I probably go after the RCW title? More than likely, at some point I will. But am I thinking it's going to be easy? I don't think anything is meant to be easy, especially if it's worth it.
Okay, that's fair, and I think you kind of answered Prince Charles' question, because Prince Charles, we know, is pretty much a Craven Rage loyalist, and he's kind of, I guess some may say, in the bag for Craven. You can collect any belts if you like, just stay away from Craven. I do have a non-WCE comment from Tim Mecca, so I actually have to bring it up, because Tim wants to ask you, are you watching the Rumble, which is 2 weeks from today? Are you? Okay, so I'll ask you then a bonus follow-up to that. What do you think will happen at the Royal Rumble?
Really, it's the only thing that I am certain on is one: Cody Rhodes is returning at the Rumble. I almost want to say they might give him lucky number 27, just because may kind of have another person win from 27, because that's always been, for a while, that was the number to have. That was the luckiest number. Other than that, looking at how everything's being built on TV, really the obvious women's Royal Rumble winner right now is having Liv win it from 1. Have Liv Morgan win the Rumble from number 1. Really, there's really with and it also is you have that whole situation with Vince's back, but he's letting Triple H run creative right now, and if he decides to, and there you got the selling the company, you've got that lovely little incident with somebody supposedly saying that they already sold it, and then having to everybody who's actually a credited journalist actually refuting that. But a lot of things can happen at the Rumble, and a lot of things in wrestling are with this whole thing, and wrestling is about to change big time. And this year will mark the biggest year in professional wrestling history since the end of the territories.
Okay, so we're talking 1983, 84-ish, in that range. We're talking about the end of, the beginning of the end of the AWA, and kind of the geographic changes in places like the NWA and Memphis. Okay, that's certainly a fair point. I mean, I think there is a lot of change in wrestling. I agree. When
the name, when you hear that the fact that they are selling, there's talks of the WWE being sold, and when you hear, even the idea of it happen, when you hear that Tony Khan and his dad are interested in buying it, it kind of throws things for a loop.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know though if Vince would actually sell it to Tony Khan. I feel like Vince would knowing Vince, he wouldn't actually let him. I mean, I guess money is money, but I think Vince, I just don't know if he would sell it to Tony Khan based on everything Vince is. I mean, I don't know here.
Honestly, like you said, money is money, and really, I think it really depends on how much money those guys put
I don't know if they can
if they are
afford it,
going.
actually. I don't even know if they can afford it because don't forget the Jaguars cost a lot of money. They've got the whole situation with the soccer team they own. I mean, they've got a lot of expenses to begin with. I mean, I don't even know, can they afford the kind of money he's going to ask?
Let's see.
And then while you do that, I have some more comments. We'll get to them. And Tim says, winning belts is just a prop. Putting on good matches and storytelling is the most important thing in wrestling. I had a wrestler, and I don't want to say the wrestler's name, tell me this, because the wrestler is, I kind of referenced early on Sportswire, and he's actually holding 2 world championships in England. He told me that the only thing that matters in wrestling is that if people cheered you and if people had a good time. He doesn't think that anything else really matters. I mean, that's what, and I don't want to say the person's name because I'll get shot for who it was that told me this, but he told me this off the air, and he's like, look, as long as the people were happy and they booed you or whatever you were intended to do, it doesn't matter about who won and who lost. And that was his point, and I'm not going to refute it because he's a big man. Eric says, and God, it would feel so exhilarating to come back and take that baby from Jovi in that open challenge match. Maybe. Or off the Messiah, Nicholas Crenson. Like Roman did to my boy Bray Wyatt at Payback 2020. So I guess Eric might be laying the foundation here, maybe the seeds for a potential return. I don't know. I mean, certainly stay tuned here on Sportswire Radio. We are certainly running the gauntlet here. We have seen a lot of developments here. We saw at the top of the show here tonight the RCW Championship. We saw that Shawn Jovi is declaring an open challenge. He wants whoever comes out first. And go ahead, Crenson.
So I did some while you were reading the comments there. I did do some looking up, and like I said, it was both Tony and his father that were interested. Yeah, Tony Khan's net worth is like 3 billion, or something like that. But last I checked with Shad is $11.6 billion. He is richer than Vince McMahon.
I take that back. So I guess if they really wanted to buy the WWE, I guess they would have a shot. I guess so. If that's the case, I didn't realize they were worth $15 billion combined, just about.
Yeah, there was like some comments. It was like some of the rumors say that doing a merger. Really, the best thing for wrestling, and the best scenario I would say in this, if they did if that were to happen, is Tony buys WWE. You keep WWE as its own thing, and you basically destroy the Forbidden Door for good. And you can have people switching back and forth, and you would still have own both companies, but you also have a product line that is so easy to have go back and forth. You could have, if you can have wrestlers be on AEW programming, and then you can be like, hey, you know what, we're gonna swap these people around, kind of like WWE when they did the whole brand split thing.
And Ring of Honor also throw in Ring of Honor because AEW has that also. I mean, you have Ring of Honor there, and there was a time for a little while you had some talent exchanges between AEW and Impact. I mean, maybe you resume that. AEW and the NWA has also had relationships. I mean, so maybe you open up some of those things. I mean, I still contend my gut says Vince wouldn't sell to the Khans, but at this point, I mean, if Vince is about selling, I mean, Vince is going to basically, I don't think it really matters about money.
Yeah.
It's really an intriguing situation because, again, WWE was always at the forefront, but the wrestling world is changing. But I'll still contend one more thing here before we move on to closing thoughts and one or two other things here with pro wrestling star, the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, is that I do believe that the state of the professional wrestling world is in a far better place than it was years ago, even during the Attitude Era. The reason that is because in the Attitude Era, you had 2.5 major companies, WWF, WCW, and ECW was kind of a major company, kind of. But now you have so many companies out there, like Ring of Honor is still around. Impact Wrestling has rebranded itself. WWE, NXT, if you want to count that as an offspring. AEW. MLW has hung in there for a long time. The NWA is back with Billy Corgan. You've also seen companies like GCW. You've also seen New Japan branch into America. So I actually think that the wrestling world is in a better place than it was when we were watching or
Roll.
just starting out.
Just think of it this way: AEW just recently did their LA show and had an
Yes.
amazing time. But also that same weekend, just before the show, before they did their show in Los Angeles, PWG did their annual Battle of Los Angeles tournament, and
Yep.
it's 2023, and this is something we words that I never thought would come out of my mouth is that Chris Jericho wrestled at a pro wrestling guerrilla show.
Yep. And then when was the last time that happened, if at all, Chris Jericho on an independent wrestling show? Think about that.
Yeah, usually like he's made maybe guest spots at shows like that, but he actually wrestled the show. Like I will say, people check out PWG if you want to see why Excalibur is the best commentator in the business, because literally PWG, like the fact that Tony lets all the AEW guys do PWG, that Excalibur is still the play-by-play guy for PWG whenever they do shows. Literally PWG was the, like, you could say Ring of Honor, but really PWG is where All Elite got its basically root started.
Yeah, I could see that. And also I have a few more comments. Well, let me get to them. Craven Rage says, I'm looking forward to coming on. I believe it's next Monday, Craven. It's next Monday, not this Monday. I have a huge announcement. So Craven Rage has broke the news for us that next Monday after Kodak Kid, he's going to have a huge announcement for us. So I tell you that if you aren't tuned in, now that you need to tune in, because if Craven Rage has a big announcement, I promise you it's going to be huge from our Universal Grand Slam Wisconsinite champion. Eric also says he was way too busy to buy it. He's all jacked up on Mountain Dew, Skip. I have to say I'm a huge Mountain Dew fan. I have to say, and I heard somebody say this, how could you drink Mountain Dew? It's disgusting. It lowers your sperm count. I've always been a Mountain Dew fan since I'm a little kid, so I will say that. Just the maintenance schedule he has now, I feel like it would take too much out of him to manage 2 wrestling programs, in my opinion, to be honest. Tim says, I'm more entertained by AEW. Yeah, I kind of think that AEW, the last few AEW shows, I've probably been into far more than especially the last couple of Raw and SmackDown shows.
Yeah, I agree. And the absolute best thing, and I love, MJF, I always kind of a love-hate relationship with. I love the MJF stuff, Danielson, MJF Danielson, but really the best thing on AEW television right now is Jon Moxley and Hangman Page.
Well, what an opening match. I mean, could you think of an opening match that was as good as that one? I mean, that was basically like they opened on fire. They went right from the gun. It was like usually you don't get a main event match like that. They went right straight for the jugular. I mean, give them a lot of credit for that.
I'm calling it right now. They are doing a Texas death match at Revolution.
Wow, I'll tell you what. I mean, Nicholas Crenson, they don't call him the new Messiah for nothing here, and he's definitely dropping bombs here. And Eric also wants to remind me that Pat McAfee, he gets more out of the wrestlers in the crowd than anyone I've seen in a while, but that's just my opinion. Yeah, Pat McAfee certainly did a good job there. And also Eric says, trust me, Mr. Craven Rage, I will be watching next Monday. So it sounds like we are certainly getting a lot into it here on Sportswire Radio. So we have a lot to discuss here. But,
imagine Pat McAfee and Excalibur together.
That'd be interesting. I kind of like, though, Excalibur and Taz together. I don't know. Pat McAfee is a good announcer, but I think Excalibur, I kind of like him with Taz, to be honest.
I'll find the match for you. It's on YouTube. There's a match. It was Roderick Strong, and I want to say it was Roderick Strong and Kenny Omega, and it was Excalibur on commentary with Davey Richards, and it was so hilarious because Davey Richards was pretending to be an old 80s wrestler.
Well, I should share my Davey Richards story here very quickly. We play podcasts on the radio versions, which are on sportnarium.com/play. And one of the shows that I play their podcast from an interview, Davey Richards. And I had made an announcement about 2 years ago that Davey Richards was coming on. And Davey Richards DMs me and says, "Oh, what happened? What did I do? I'm in class right now. I see that you tagged me." And I was like, "No, don't worry about it. Go back to class. I just tagged you that show that's on my radio is playing your interview with them. That's all." I said, "Don't worry about it. Do what you got to do. I know you got school and responsibilities." So that was kind of my one Davey Richards story. And one other thing I'll say before we move on very quickly, MJF wrestled, and he's the AEW World Champion. I believe he only wrestled 8 matches last year. So that's such an interesting dynamic. What is going to happen with MJF? Because for such a young wrestler to be a world champ, I know he's so great on the mic, but the guy wrestled less than 10 matches all of 2022. So what is he going to bring here for that company in 2023? Certainly stay tuned. I know Craven Rage, Nicholas Crenson, Shawn, Jovi, they're going to wrestle more matches than MJF did in 2022. And Eric has another comment here. He says, "I wish that Jerry the King would come back. I feel like his style would mix with some of the new people in the game right now." Well, what is Jerry Lawler turn 74 this year? I guess. Al
Yeah.
Michaels is on the Sunday night calls right now. I guess you could make a point. Al Michaels is doing the football games. Vince Scully was calling Dodger games until he was like 900. So yeah, Jerry
You got
Lawler.
like for Wisconsin, anybody who knows, we still have Bob Uecker.
Good point. And Bob Huker's got to be what now? 85, I want to say, around 85 or so, just about.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is like, this is as a baseball fan, I'll say this really is I hope Brewers get to a World Series before we lose that man, because really that's the one thing is I'd love to see him call a World Series.
And they've been knocking on the door the past several years, and they've had some good teams. And Bob Uecker, think about Bob Uecker, really kind of is the definition of Mr. Baseball. In fact, you'll appreciate this, and some of the Wisconsin fans here of WC will actually appreciate this. I actually have Sirius satellite radio, and sometimes in the summer, what I like to do is I like to listen to some of the other baseball teams, their radio feeds, and Bob Uecker has always been one of the guys that I'll always try to listen to. It's him, and also when he was doing the Marlin games, it was I forget his name. He used to do it for the Expos. It was Dave Van something, and he used to also do the Marlins games. And I would try to always listen to him because I appreciate those guys because they've been doing it forever. Bob Uecker, he's been in baseball now over 60 years, and the fact that he still does it, and he's doing it solo now too, I think, right? Bob Huecker's doing the Brewers game solo, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he does have somebody do it with him. It's just that with Brewers, he now only does the home games.
Well, because Vince Scully was doing the same thing. The travel is just. You can't do it at that age. To realistically travel all across the country and do that, and his voice for 150 plus game season, and you just can't do it. The fact that he's even doing, 81 home games in a season is amazing, and the fact that what he brings in his energy, it's still impressive to say the least.
Honestly, I'll also say, go back to wrestling, where the Brewers play. I would love to see a wrestling event at.
Didn't when Jeff Jarrett, when he was starting, was it Global Force Wrestling? Was there ever a talk of them doing something there in that stadium, or am I missing something?
They didn't do it at. So they actually did that at the minor league stadium that we have here in Appleton.
Okay.
They did Global Force. But really, because honestly, the American Family Field, or Miller Park as it was originally called, really that would be more fit for like a Rumble, a SummerSlam, or even AEW to have a show there, because really it's just a beautiful place. And just thinking back to the fact that at the original when the construction was started, they had to deal with like some tragedy issues because if anybody who doesn't know the history of that stadium, look up the Big Blue collapse.
Now that was that 2002, the first year of the ballpark. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it 2002 or was it 2000?
I'm trying to remember. I'm gonna
because the year of the All-Star game, the famous tie was 2002. That was the if I'm sure you remember the one time the Major League Baseball All-Star game ended in a tie, and everybody was so upset about the All-Star game. But I think it was around. I want to say you got.
So the Big Blue crane collapse actually happened while the place was American Family Field was being built, which was July 14th, 1999.
Okay, but the stadium didn't open in '99 because I don't remember
No.
in '99.
This was during the actual when they were actually they announced it because it was like the crane that they were using to build it literally collapsed. And unfortunately, I want to say there was like at least a couple of construction workers passed away because of it.
Yeah, listen, unfortunately, these things do happen in buildings. I know, and you have different construction projects. These things are unfortunate, and obviously we pray for the family because I am a reverend. But yeah, certainly Milwaukee is one of those parks that I've heard actually good things from. We've had some different shows on Sportswire that cover baseball, and that's always been a good park, and it's a franchise that is kind of in the need of going back to the World Series. Last time was 1982 against the Cardinals in the 7-game series. So hopefully the Brewers can get there again. They do have, I think, a good team still. So we'll see. Hopefully that happens here. But I do want to get to closing thoughts, and I want to give you the floor now. Anything that you want to share or say, and I mean, anything else that we haven't covered in WC, I definitely want to give you the floor. And always love having you. And anything else you want to say? I mean, fire away. You are the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, so go for it.
Yes, I have 3 things I want to say. I hope to see the Mecca soon. Boy, everybody in WCE, remember the training wheels go off this year. Mr. Packer, I'm sure you'll make a right decision. And I do have actually 2 extra things. Darkfire, you'll get yours eventually. And lastly, as for WCE in general, I expect major announcements to be coming up very, very soon here. And everybody, we're just about ready to start building to the luck of the draw.
Well, Kodak Kid is coming on next Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time, and Craven Rage is coming on, who we heard from a few minutes ago, who said he's going to have his own huge announcement. So I almost have a feeling the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, we're going to get maybe some early entrees to the main course coming up in some of these announcements, because we are getting a little closer to the start of the season, because if all things go into fruition, we're about 3 months or so away from the season. It doesn't feel too far away from it all from that. So, I mean, we're about 90 days away. Today's January 14th, and I hope that that's the case. And Tim
we're about 3, almost 2 months away.
Oh, even shorter than that. All right, so we're looking at early April. I had a mid-April return, but hopefully the weather certainly goes in our favor. I mean, so far in New York, the winter's been, other than Christmas weekends, been pretty mild. So, I mean, hopefully that continues. I know in Wisconsin, it's always going to be cold. So if it's warm here, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be mild where you guys are. But I hope it's going to be, a mild winter, to say the least.
Yeah, and hopefully we don't get a 2018 April.
Well, that's true too. Well, to be fair, last year in New York we had, I believe, one morning in June, like 35 degrees or 40 degrees. I woke up. There was a Met game played, and I remember it was Gary Cohen and Keith Hernandez were on the call, and it was almost like they were in coats. It was a Mets-Marlins game, and it was like I was actually freezing watching it. So I could certainly hope that we'll have a warm spring, but hope springs eternal. And Tim says, L.A. Hollywood return. Let's just say in talks, TOP for life. I mean, I might have to ask Tim this question when he comes on to Sportswire early next month. That might be something I might have to ask him, you think?
Possibly. It's been a while since I've heard that name.
Boy, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to ask them because we are going to get Tim and Eric on the show here for sure. So we're going to definitely make sure we get everybody here. There's a lot of people we're going to get on here for full WCE coverage, and I guess maybe that'll include Eric and Tim. I don't know, but I know next Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time, in this same chair, we will have on Kodak Kid, who's going to give us his injury update, and then we'll have on Craven Rage, who's promised us a huge announcement. So I would definitely want to tune in. You can tune in here on Facebook at Sportswire Radio, YouTube at Sportswire Radio. If you don't like my mugshot, you can always go to sportnarium.com/player for all of the audio shows and also on YouTube as well. And for Wrestling Championship Entertainment, please follow us on YouTube at WCE Heat, WCEheat.com, and Wrestling Championship on Facebook at WCE Heat, where you can see more stuff from Nicholas Crenson, Craven Rage, Shawn Jovi, Darkfire, Adonis Felios, Kodak Kid, James Marshall. You name them, they're there. And, of course, our 2022 Best Feud of the Year winner, the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, who has promised us here tonight a very, very big 2023 ahead. He's got a lot on his agenda, whether it's championships, ending things with Darkfire, Adonis Felios. Better be careful what you wish for. Who knows what else? I know we're going to hear from Nicholas Crenson a lot here in the near and distant future. My friend, can't wait to be with you once again. I got a good feeling. You're one of my guys here, so I'm really counting on you. You've become, that's it. You're one of my guys now on Sportswire. So I'm really counting on you to have a really, really big 2023 because the other guys that are my guys all had big years and won world championships. RPDs, the Wrestle Island World Champion. Disciples got the GT Ministries and the Nonstop Action Wrestling title. Kyle Kennedy held it, and you're going to be one of those guys I feel that might hold something else as well. So keep up the good work, my friend. Tim wishes us a good night. Tim, I'll be in touch with you in a few minutes, and I definitely look forward to the future, my friend. And thank you for all you do, the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson.
You have a wonderful night, Tom, and I will see you next time.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you were on sportnarium.com/player, you'll go back to your regularly scheduled programming and enjoy the rest of the NFL game because apparently the Jacksonville Jaguars have almost made an improbable comeback, so we'll see if they compete here for one of the greatest comebacks in playoff history. But in the meantime, we'll be back here Monday night with more wrestling coverage with Nonstop Action Wrestling's Champagne Charlie and the Nomad Dalton Garrett, and then right afterwards, the Vigilante of Pro Wrestling Bentley, who's going to be wrestling for the GT Ministries World Championship against Disciple. So stay tuned for all of that. My name is the Reverend Tom Brice. Thank you to the resident rock star, Shawn Jovi, and also to the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson. We are here on the #1 global radio station that is Sportswire Radio. Good night, everybody.